اشرقت نفسي بنور من فؤادي حينما رددت يا رب العباد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Just a quick recap. I want you to tell me just a couple of things. Which is the last story that I told you?
Abu Salama's and
Yeah. The story of Salama is basically the story of her hijrah. And her husbands and her sons. And you remember they were all split. So who helps her get to Medina? Yeah. So Uthman ibn Talha. And what is the special thing about him?
he was very modest.
He was kafir. He was noble.
Well married.
Yes.
And he was the owner of the Kaaba, the key of the kingdom.
Yes. So until today, it's his descendants who are the owners of the key of the Kaaba. One more important thing that you should remember about him: when does he become Muslim?
Just before the conquest.
Very good. Just before the conquest of Mecca, and that's very, very essential, because the people who became Muslim before the conquest of Mecca have more reward, and their Islam carries more weight than those who became Muslim after, because obviously after the conquest of Mecca it's easy, and before is when the times are still hard. So he's from the last batch who embraces Islam. Who are the two people with him who also become Muslim in that? Yes, very good. Khalid ibn al-Walid and Amr ibn al-As. Yeah. Okay. So today, inshallah.
That's a road, right? That's a street. Khalid bin Walid.
Yeah.
All the Sahabas, there were streets.
Yeah.
Amr bin As. That's all
You
you
said Abu Bakr or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, and the Zurmara and his mouth was somehow everything.
I think I even saw a street after the name of Abdullah ibn Jud'an. I mean, you guys, when you're driving around the streets, you should try revising your Seerah. Try and remember, where did we hear this name? Where was he in the Seerah? Might be an idea to keep a diary and write down names and then figure out, where they fit in the Seerah.
What would they fit on the road?
Yeah. So we're going to do a couple of more stories of Hijrah before we move on to the Hijrah of the Prophet ﷺ. Okay, so today we're going to cover that, and we're going to talk about the virtues of Medina. So today we're going to talk about one of the hijrahs we'll talk about is the hijrah of Umar ibn al-Khattab. And Umar radiallahu anhu, he narrates his story. He says, when we decided to make hijrah to Medina, I agreed with Ayyash bin Abi al-Rabi'a and Hisham bin al-As to accompany him and to go together to Medina. We set an appointed time to meet at Suruf, which is an area outside of Mecca. It's like a valley. We said, if morning comes and any of us is missing, that means the person is detained and we should just go ahead and migrate. So far, what we understand is when Umar ibn al-Khattab wanted to migrate, when he wanted to do the hijrah, he didn't do it on his own. He selected two men from the Quraysh to migrate with. One was Ayyash bin Abi al-Rabi'a, and the other one was Hisham bin al-As. Hisham bin al-As, as you can tell by the name, is the brother of Amr. They decided to meet at Suruf, which is a valley outside Mecca, just outside Mecca, and they said that when dawn breaks, we will move towards Medina. Whoever comes there comes together with us. Whoever doesn't make it, we will assume that some problem has happened and they were not able to join us. Because until now, these things are happening surreptitiously, so this is not happening necessarily very openly. And the Quraysh are not happy about Meccans leaving Mecca and going somewhere else. So people who are doing this there's a chance they succeed and there's a chance that they fail. So they go to this, they reach this place, and only two of them turn up, Umar and Ayyash. Hisham doesn't turn up. So they don't wait. Once it's dawn, they move towards Medina. They reach Medina. Okay. Now, once they reach Medina, Abu Jahl is the half brother of Ayyash bin Abi Rabi'a. And Abu Jahl goes with one of his brothers, who is Al-Harith bin Hisham. And they go all the way to Medina to speak to Ayyash. When they get to Medina, they get to Ayyash. They tell him a huge sob story about his mother. They say, your mother has sworn not to eat until you return. She has sworn not to comb her hair until you return. And she has sworn not to enjoy the shade until you return. So she will stand in the sun and she will starve herself and she will keep herself unkempt and not look after herself until you return. And they keep saying this to him. They make the story really upsetting for him, and they keep telling him. So the exact statement they say is, your mother has warned that she will not allow a comb to touch her hair until she sees you, nor will she shelter from the sun. Now Umar ibn al-Khattab, he's listening to all this, and he says to Ayyash, he says, these people want to deceive you. They want to entice you and take you back. It is a trick. And he says, regarding the oath of your mother, when her hair is filled with lice, she will comb it. And when she feels the severe heat of Makkah, she will take shelter. So forget about it and do not go with them. Because he's saying that this is nonsense, that what they're telling you. This is just a trick, just to try and encourage you to come back, and then they're going to deal with you. This woman, these are like unreasonable oaths that she has taken. So if I say, I swear I will not eat, until my son comes to speak to me himself, eventually when I'm hungry, I will take something and eat, even if I hide and eat it. But I'm a human being. I can't have food in front of me and starve myself. So he's saying this is all a trick. She will not fulfill these oaths, so don't go back. But his heart is soft. Ayyash's heart is soft. So he feels, and this is his mother. This is not anybody. This is his mother. So he feels very upset. Umar ibn al-Khattab, he says about himself, Lastu bil khib wal khib ikhda'ni, which means I'm not a man who tricks others, neither do I allow anyone to trick me. So he's saying that I'm not a trickster, but I don't fall for other people's tricks either, So he's smart enough to know when somebody is just pulling a fast one. So he says, do not go with them. Anyway, in spite of all that, Ayyash is convinced, and he says, okay, I will go with them. He says, look, I'm going to go back. I've come here safely. I've left most of my things here. I have some wealth over there as well. I'll bring that back. I'll check on my mom. So Umar says to him that, look, if it is wealth that you're going back for, don't do that, because I'll give you some wealth over here. He says, but he still wants to go back to see his mom. So Umar ibn al-Khattab, he says to him, he says, okay, if you insist, then at least take this camel of mine with you. This is a fast and strong camel. If you ever feel suspicious, run away and come back to Medina. So he says, if while you're on the way you feel that these people have tricked you and you realize that, I'm stuck now, he said, this is a really fast camel, and he knows that this camel is faster than their camels. So he says, just run back to, just ride back to Medina. So they agree to that, and then they set off. Now when they set off, as they are half brothers, they're all chatting and trying to catch up and talking, and they're trying to make him feel comfortable, and they ride on. After a while, Abu Jahl says, he complains about his camel. And he says, what a horrible camel. It is too difficult and it is slow. And so he says to Ayyash, can we like switch camels for a while, maybe my camel can rest for a little bit, and because now they've made him sort of feel comfortable in their company. So they say, let's switch for a little while. This camel will get some rest, and let us ride on your camel so we can complete this journey. As soon as, and Ayyash agrees, again, being the good man and the good heart that he has, as soon as he makes his camel kneel and his legs touch the ground, they ambush him, they tie him up, they catch him, and they say that now, we're going to take you back, and we're going to deal with you now. And yeah, well, obviously, nobody wants to go back to Makkah once they've left, because it's so risky. So anyway, they dragged him back to Makkah, and they ride him around the city, and they tell people, this is what we do with the fools who decide to leave Makkah, because they need to teach them a lesson that you guys better stop thinking about going to Medina. This is what's going to happen to you. And there are a couple of narrations, Allah Alam, which one is more authentic. One is that he apostatizes.
The one who did this to him are his half-brothers.
Half-brothers, yeah. And Umar ibn al-Khattab, who's not even related to him by blood, he's trying his best to save him. He's saying, look, don't do this, don't go. And he still sacrifices his good camel, and he gives it to him, that, look, save yourself and come back if there's a problem. But, Qadar Allah, this is what is written for him. So some narrations say that he apostatizes, he leaves Islam, and some narrations say that he is put into a prison by them when he gets back. And they say that Hisham ibn al-As is in the same situation as him. Either he also apostates, or he is also thrown into the prison along with Ayyash. And when the Prophet, because at this time the Prophet ﷺ is still in Makkah when this is happening. He hasn't gone to Medina yet, so he's in Makkah, and he's aware of the situation, but of course nobody can do anything. And when he migrates to Medina, one of the first qunuts he recites, qunut is recited in the time of difficulty or problem. One of the first qunuts he recites, he makes specific dua for Ayyash and Hisham by name, that Allah, help them and assist them. And then later on he asks amongst the people, he says, who will rescue them? Who will rescue them and bring them back to Medina? And then eventually Walid ibn al-Walid volunteers, and he says, I will do it. Oh, yes, Khalid's brother. And there are no details of how he does it, but he enters Makkah in the night, he somehow gets into the prison, he releases them, and he brings them back without anybody finding out. And Umar ibn al-Khattab said that we used to say among ourselves, the Muslims that stayed behind and were enticed by the non-believers, as in they were tempted to stay behind and not move to Medina, Allah will never forgive them. That was the understanding they had. And they used to feel that they had lost all hope. They thought that now that we have sinned by staying back, that's it. There is no hope for us, and Allah will not forgive us, and Allah is angry with us. And that was their understanding for a while, until the Prophet ﷺ makes hijrah to Medina, and then these verses of Surah Al-Zumar are revealed. They're the very famous verses. Does anybody know what they are? The verses would say, La taqnatu min rahmatillah. So, O my servants who have transgressed against themselves, do not despair of the mercy of Allah. Indeed, Allah forgives all sins. Indeed, it is He who is the forgiving, the merciful. And return in repentance to your Lord and submit to Him before the punishment comes upon you. Then you will not be helped. And follow the best of what was revealed to you from your Lord before the punishment comes upon you suddenly while you do not perceive. So when these verses were revealed, Umar ibn al-Khattab, he wrote these verses and he sent them to Hisham ibn al-As. And Hisham said that when I received these verses, I would go up to Tuwa and I would read it and reread it and read it again and again to try and understand why has Umar sent me these verses. And then he said, until I understood that this verse was revealed talking about us and saying that no matter what you do, Allah can forgive you, because they're thinking that that's it, we got enticed, we came back and now we're doomed. So then he understood, and he said that as soon as he understood, he said, I asked Allah for forgiveness, I mounted my camel and I went towards Medina. So this is the version of the people who think that he had left Islam, then he asked for forgiveness and he came back. And the other version that I told you is where they thought that he was put in prison and then he was released and brought back by Walid ibn Walid.
Which verse is that?
This is in Surah Al-Zumar, verse number... is there a Mus'haf here? Oh, there's one here, isn't it?
But this was revealed in Medina, right?
Yeah. Okay, I'll read it out to you. It is verse number 53 and 54. قل يا عبادي الذين أسرفوا على أنفسهم لا تقنطوا من رحمة الله إن الله يغفر الذنوب جميعا إنه هو الغفور الرحيم وأنيبوا إلى ربكم وأسلموا له من قبل أن يأتيكم العذاب ثم لا تنصرون. Okay, so that's verses 53 and 54. The last story that I want to tell you is the story of Suhaib al-Rumi. I hope my recording doesn't stop. So Suhaib al-Rumi, does anybody know anything about him? Have you heard his name?
He's like a Roman because he's a Roman.
Yeah, that's what people generally think. So that's what he was not. He was not a Roman, but
He was from that place and he came to Mecca and he married someone else.
yes, that's true. But what his origin was, he was from one of the Arab tribes, from a northern Arabian tribe. And then he was captured and sold to the Romans. So that happened at a very young age. So he was the only Sahabi who spoke Latin. And he grows up in the Roman lands. So his Arabic is a bit weak, and his Arabic is sort of accented. So he's an Arab ethnically, but he speaks Arab like a non-Arab.
He comes into Makkah as a beggar and he goes out as a rich person,
Yes.
leaving everything behind.
Yes.
He leaves, and Allah says that the Prophet said that
You have achieved.
you did a trade that's like
Yes. Very good. Yes. So we're going to see why the Prophet ﷺ says that to him. So some main points about him. Number one, he was not a Roman, even though his name is Suhaib al-Rumi, but he grows up in the lands of the Romans. We don't know exactly which part. Is it? But we know that he's somewhere in Europe where he's growing up. He's the only Sahabi who spoke fluent Latin. He was originally from a northern Arabian tribe. So in the days of Jahiliyyah, he was conquered and sold to the Romans, and that's why he grows up in the lands of the Romans. And he was quite fair-skinned and ruddy complexioned, sort of like pinkish, So his appearance also gives him away as being European and not being Arab, because the real color of Arabs is wheatish, The true Arabs are the Arabs of Yemen, and they're all like tanned color. They're not fair-skinned. A lot of the Arabs who are fair-skinned are usually a mix, like in the UAE, you have a lot of Iranians mixed with Emiratis, and you have a lot of fair Emiratis. So they're not the pure Arabs. He spoke Arabic with an accent. And when he gets into Rome, or he's taken to Rome, he falls into slavery. And then his owner, perhaps his owner knows that he's originally Arab, he sells him to an Arab. And that's how he works his way to the house of Abdullah ibn Jud'an. Abdullah ibn Jud'an is, I think he's an uncle of Aisha radiallahu anha. Eventually, some of the slaves, they were allowed to earn their freedom. So they would work until a certain time and earn a certain amount until they can buy their own freedom. So he does that. So he says that I will work until I buy my own freedom. So he frees himself eventually. And he becomes a minor businessman, you can say, in Makkah. And that's how he, earns some money. He accepts Islam amongst the earliest batch of people who accept Islam. He accepts Islam on the same day as Yasir. As Ammar bin Yasir. And Ammar bin Yasir is the one who sort of gives dawah to him and takes his shahada, and Ammar also becomes Muslim on the same day. And throughout Seerah, you will see Suhaib and Ammar are sort of like, they're like best buddies. They're always together, and they do a lot of stuff together. And while the Prophet ﷺ is still in Makkah, Suhaib decides to leave Makkah and move to Medina when the Hijrah is taking place. And now you can imagine that Makkah is a small town. It's not a bustling city like it is today, right? There must be maybe a few hundred people living in Makkah, okay? And anything that happens, everybody finds out. Sort of like, I suppose, like, your KFMC compound, right? I mean, most people know what's happening with most people, and it's a community, and you sort of know what's, even this is, I think, still a bit big. That's quite small. So if somebody's leaving or doing something like that, or even like, how does Abu Salama get caught? He's just preparing his, family to leave, and everybody finds out, and then they all like turn up and they destroy his plans. So similarly, somehow they find out that he's left. So he's already left Makkah, and what they do is a group of them, sort of like militia or bandit Quraysh, they chase after him and they catch up with him. And what happens is they surround him. Now Suhaib is armed. He's got his bows and arrows and everything. So he pulls out his bow and arrow, and he says to the people of the Quraysh, he says, "O people of Quraysh, I have 40 arrows in my quiver. And I swear by Allah that none of you will get to me until I have used all 40. And then when you get to me, here is my sword. And I swear by Allah, nobody will get to me until I get to him first." He's a determined man, okay? And he has, he's lived a hard life. So he's a tough guy. Now the Quraysh, they don't want Suhaib to leave, but they also value their own lives, right? They're not ready to put their life on the line just to make sure that Suhaib comes back to Makkah. So there's a bit of a standoff for a while, and they're thinking, what do we do now? Because this guy's going to, he's going to put up a fight. He's not just going to surrender. And then Suhaib says to them, "What if I tell you where all of my wealth is?" And because in those days, obviously, there were no banks, there was no safes. So what they would do is whatever their savings or their wealth was, they would bury it somewhere, and they would remember that place. And that was where their safe was. And then after a while, or whenever they would need it, they would go to that place and bury their treasure. Sorry? Exactly. That's why there are all these treasure hunts and things like that, because there are times when people would have just stumbled across it and, just happened to coincidentally, dig that area up or something and find treasure. So it's yours. So he said to them, "What if I tell you where everything is, where all my wealth is? Will you let me go?" So they agreed. And he honestly told them where everything is. He didn't lie to them or anything. And obviously now when he arrives in Medina, he arrives with only the clothes on his back. So that ladder that he had climbed in Mecca, he's basically gone back to level 0 now. And that's why when he sees the Prophet ﷺ for the first time, when he reaches Medina, the Prophet ﷺ says, Allah has revealed in the Quran about you. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَشْتَرِي نَفْسَهُ ابْتِغَاءَ مَرْضَاتِ اللَّهِ. That from amongst men are those who have sold themselves to earn the pleasure of Allah. So basically he sells everything he has just to get to Medina and to be able to live safely as a Muslim and to be able to live with the Prophet ﷺ. And so
But our Prophet ﷺ was the last to migrate.
yes,
So
when the Prophet ﷺ comes, I think he tells him, when he sees him, he tells him this. And obviously the Prophet ﷺ didn't know what has happened with him on his journey. So Jibreel would have, revealed to him and told him that, all his wealth was taken and that this verse was revealed. And those are a few of the stories of Hijrah. I told you last time about how the Prophet ﷺ before I go on to that, let me just tell you 2 lessons that we learn from these stories. Number 1 is the forgiveness of Allah. The forgiveness of Allah is so vast, we can't comprehend it or understand it in our little brains, in our little lives, and our little minds. When one of my children was younger, they would do something and then they'd come and say, I'm sorry. I'd say, okay, it's all right, don't do it again. Second time, same thing, same offense, same apology. Okay, don't do it again. Third time, same offense, same apology. By the 5th or the 6th time, I would say, I've had enough. I'm not accepting this apology. I don't even want to know about this anymore. Okay, so to continue, yes, I was talking about forgiveness. So when that would happen, that's when you properly understand, or at least try to understand and grasp Allah's forgiveness. And when you say that Allah is Tawwabur Rahim, He forgives again and again and again and again and again. As long as you ask for forgiveness, He forgives. Until your soul reaches your throat, He will forgive you. You keep asking, He will keep forgiving you. Nowhere does it say that you can only ask Allah's forgiveness 20 times. If you commit the same offense the 21st time, that's it, you can't do it anymore. Nowhere. So, as human beings, we're so deficient in these things. We can't even understand that level of, Allah is so patient with us. He's so kind. He's so merciful. And He just forgives us over and over again. We do the same things again and again. And when that happens to you, that's when you realize what it's like to be asked to excuse someone over and over again. You think that, okay, is this a joke? You keep doing the same thing and keep saying sorry. But this is exactly what we do. We keep doing the same thing and then we keep saying sorry to Allah. And we expect Him to forgive us. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is very, very forgiving. Of course, you don't play games with Allah, so you don't say that, because Allah is forgiving, I'm just going to keep doing this and I'm going to keep saying sorry, because obviously Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows who's sincere, who has genuinely made a mistake, and who is, sincerely asking for forgiveness. So that's one of the things that we learn from these stories. The other thing we learn is to beware of the disbelievers, because this is what gets the best of Ayyash, right? They're not Muslim, and they trick him. They try and soften his heart, and they convince him. A lot of the times, especially in terms of politics, you fall for some sweet speech that someone makes, and you think, I'm totally on his side, and I totally accept what he says or whatever, So just always remember that at the end of the day, you should always have your guard up. So, you might sympathize with something that someone says. They might say something that you agree with, but you should never let your guard down and completely fall for what they are saying, because at the end of the day, they're still on the other side of the fence, and if they were that smart and that good, they would be on this side of the fence. Wallahu ta'ala alam. And of course, we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also tells us in the Quran about taking not disbelievers as your close friends, and he says that that hatred has already come on their tongues, and what their hearts conceal is even worse. This is what Allah is saying in the Quran. So you're just the thing that they have verbally said until now in publicly, that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a whole there's lots of layers of that inside their hearts, so they have a lot of hatred towards us. So we should be careful, and we should be cautious. So with that, we officially moved to the Medina period, and so in the early stages of Medina, we're still going to talk about we've spoken about the hijrah of a few people, because people are still coming in. Of course, you could say the cherry on the cake is when we will talk about the hijrah of the Prophet ﷺ with his companion, and that's a really amazing story, mashallah. So we will come to that, inshallah. The next dars I might not be here, but the dars after that, inshallah. So I will confirm with Rabina, and I'll tell her. Now, one thing that I wanted to mention to you is that the Medina period is sometimes called the Maghazi, because, like we said, now we're coming into the period of battle after battle after battle after battle. So we're going to learn about different battles. We're going to learn about different strategies they use, and inshallah, we'll study them in enough detail for you to remember each battle, because that's important as well. It shouldn't just be like a hodgepodge of, names and, incidents which you can't really remember. A lot of people are interested in, descriptions of the Prophet ﷺ, because remember we said that very little was documented in Makkah, because most of his life they didn't even know he's a Rasul. So nobody's really writing anything about him. When he becomes a messenger, there's persecution, there's oppression, there's fitna, there's fighting, killing, beating. Again, nobody has the time or the luxury to sit down and write things down. People are literally just trying to survive and keep their head above the water, and they're just trying to live until they get to Medina. Now in Medina, now is when Islam blooms, and this is the, you could say, the base or the home of Islam. And now people have the luxury to dwell on detail, to write things. So a lot of people, they look for descriptions of the Prophet ﷺ's appearance, for example, and things like that from the later times, and it is people who later on who meet him and see him, who describe him in a lot of detail. We might cover some of that, but for that there are specific books. There's, I think, Shama'il al-Tirmidhi, I think it's translated in Urdu and English and various languages, and that describes a lot of his lifestyle, his appearance, how he lived with his wives, what he wore, what he did, and those kind of things. So you can get a lot of that from those books. Here we will talk mostly about the Ghazawat, but we will also, touch on a few other things. And of course, there will be a lot of Quranic verses that we will go through in this part of the Seerah, because the Quran is revealed preceding some incidents in Medina. It is revealed during the actual incident happening, and some verses are revealed after the incident has happened. So there's a lot of Quranic verses which go hand in hand with this part of the Seerah. Again, remember, in Makkah, the verses are different, and the verses are characterized. So when you read an ayah, it's almost like you immediately know whether this ayah was revealed in Makkah or in Medina. So what are the Meccan verses mostly about? Yes. And yes, they're all about Akhirah, about Day of Judgment, stories and Tawheed, and yeah, exactly. The verses in Medina, yes, ahkam and rulings, and because now the faith is there, now we need to train the faith. How is it supposed to behave? Battles, ghazawat, and all these things, so you can, when you read certain ayat, immediately, oh, this must be Medinan verse, Medinan, so like that. Okay, so quickly, inshallah, I hope I can finish this part. I wanted to tell you about
Virtues of Medina.
Virtues of Medina. Just one thing I wanted to ask you before we start that. There were 2 migrations that have taken place so far. The first one was to Habasha, and the second one is to Medina. What is the difference between these 2 migrations?
The first one, they were asked to be, because it was
They went to a Christian land.
They were not really asked to. Sorry?
They went to a Christian land.
Yes.
And the other one, Yathrib, wasn't a Christian land.
Okay. All right. That's one difference.
They were invited by the king.
nobody to support, and here there were people to support.
No, they were forced to go because they were being tortured in Mecca.
Yeah, they were forced to go, as in they themselves, they needed to get out, right? So it's not like somebody was telling them, but they just wanted to get out. Here as well, a lot of them, they went of their own accord.
To go to Medina, but to Habasha it was more like if you want you can go.
And then also to Medina, it was...
Perhaps you could say that.
Medina was inspired by Habasha, but they knew the Habasha one worked out,
The
so
Prophet went to Medina.
they thought...
Is it the spread of Islam?
No, so basically, when they go to Medina, when they go to Habasha, they are seeking refuge, okay? They don't, you could say they are almost in an inferior position, and they have just come for like shelter. Just like, for example, let's say I own a shop, and it starts raining, and you come running and you stand under the umbrella of my shop. Now, you're not going to throw your weight around, because this is my shop and I'm actually giving you shelter. So, you feel like you owe me something. So you just keep your head down, you take the shelter until you need it, and then you move on, right? They didn't really leave their marks, sort of, you could say. They did not really establish themselves there. They just stayed for shelter, to get away from the oppression, and then they go back.
They were refugees.
Yes, exactly. They're like refugees, right? Just like if a refugee was to come and stay in Saudi, what position or status would they have, right? You just think, oh, poor them, they need some shelter, and you carry on with your life the way it is. So that's the first thing. That so they went to Habasha to flee persecution, so they don't become a part of the society of Abyssinia. So they're secluded, just like a refugee camp would be, or something like that, and they don't have the ability to change that society, because they're actually like taking a favor. But when they moved to Medina, they establish an Islamic community, and there's a big difference between these two migrations for that reason. And both the migrations have a completely different impact on the society, because even when they moved to Medina, the majority of the people of Medina, they're not necessarily all Muslim. Yes, a lot of them have become Muslim. That does help, but still, they're able to leave their print or their mark. The other thing to remember is when the Muhajirun, they're called Muhajirun, right? Now when they're moving from Makkah to Medina, and the people in Medina, the Yathribites, are now called Ansar. Why are they called Ansar? When the people move from Makkah to Medina, where do they stay? Do they stay in a hotel? Yes, they have to stay in people's homes, and people have to open their homes. There were no furnished apartments or hotels or travel lodge or anything like that at that time. So when a traveler came, they would have to have a host. Somebody would have to agree to keep them and feed them and look after them. That's why the Prophet ﷺ said that the traveler's right is for 3 nights, and after that he looks after himself. It's not necessarily talking about just a visitor, but it's talking about a traveler like in those days where they did not have anywhere to stay and somebody would have to host them. Okay. Now, virtues of Medina. The Prophet ﷺ asked Allah to make them love Medina. So he said, "Oh Allah, make us love Medina like we love Makkah or more." And also the Prophet ﷺ said, "Oh Allah, double the barakah of Medina compared to what you have given Makkah." And subhanallah, a lot of people, they actually experience this. Like a lot of people, if you ask them, their love for Medina doesn't compare to anything else. Your love for Medina and the peace you feel in Medina, the tranquility you feel there, the tuma'nina and the sukoon that you feel, that you don't feel it anywhere else. And the way, your heart is attached to Makkah. It's a different kind of attachment, but your attachment to Medina is like, it's like almost like you feel like that's where I belong, that's where I want to go, and that's where I want to, end up. It's just a different and strange kind of attachment you have to Medina. And this is all the answer of the dua of the Prophet ﷺ. And also, the barakah. So many people said, the barakah of Medina, you can't compare it to anything else. And the Prophet ﷺ, he made dua for more barakah than Allah has given.
I read somewhere in one of the dua books, apparently the dates of Medina, if you ate one of the dates of Medina, I don't know how true that is, it will protect you from the venomous snakes, and it's like a protection from So if you go to Medina, make sure you buy the dates.
Yeah.
So I read it somewhere, one of the dua books, it says if you eat it protects you for that day.
So the second thing is that Medina is protected from Dajjal. And that enough in itself is a good enough reason for us to want to be there. And the Prophet ﷺ said that there are angels on every entrance to Medina protecting it from Dajjal. So Dajjal cannot enter Medina. He tries from here, he tries from there, but he doesn't succeed.
Medina and Mecca.
No, just Medina.
Just Medina?
Yeah, just Medina.
Mecca as well, no?
No, as far as I know, just Medina.
Oh yeah, I've heard Mecca and Medina.
No, as far as I know, just Medina. Check again. Wherever you read that, send it to me. Okay. We'll complete it. Okay, we'll complete it either next time, inshallah. Or actually, not next time. After Salah, if we can just pray after, then just finish this, and then we'll continue the story of the Hijrah next time, inshallah. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Okay, so far we said that the Prophet ﷺ, he made dua that, oh Allah, make us love Medina like we love Makkah or more. And he said, oh Allah, double the barakah of Medina compared to what you have given Makkah. The second thing we said is that Medina is protected from the Dajjal, and there are angels on every entrance to Medina, so Dajjal cannot enter the city of Medina. The third thing is that there is a special reward for being patient on the hardships of Medina. Even today, if you ask people who live in Medina, they'll tell you medical care is pants, education is pants, as in it's terrible. Yeah. People who live in Medina, they're not living there for the medical care or for the education, or like some people, they will move to a city just because there's a university there and their kids can go to university in such and such place. But people who live in Medina, they purely live there for the barakah of Medina, out of love for the Prophet ﷺ. Of course, some people live there because they just that's their home, that's where they were born, raised, etc. But the people who move there, they don't move there for what you call creature comforts. They move there for spiritual reasons. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, and even at that time when the Muhajirun, they moved to Medina, as you may or may not know, they all became very sick. The climate in Makkah is very different from the climate in Medina. Medina's climate is quite similar to Riyadh. It's very dry, and the nearest water is Yambu, which is about 200 kilometers outside the city of Medina. So Medina's climate is very dry, and any dry climate is harsh. And so they're coming from Makkah, which is very close to Jeddah and the Red Sea, right? So it's a damp kind of climate. And when they move to Medina, a lot of them, they become very sick. And then rumors spread to Makkah that, the Muhajirun have become weak. And so, people start thinking it's going to be easy to fight them. And so the Prophet ﷺ...
Don't they think it's like that curse from the Jews or something?
Yeah, I think some of them, they think that maybe it is...
That's why when Abdullah bin Zubair was born, they celebrated because it was like the first
They thought that there's no births happening. But also, they don't know why they've become sick, but they know that they have become very sick. So when they go for their first Umrah, the Prophet ﷺ orders them to run in the first 3 rounds of the tawaf to show that they have strength and they have not become weak and sick and they don't have any strength. So, that's why they asked to even run at that time. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, anyone who is patient on the hardships of Medina, I will be his intercessor on the Day of Judgment. I will intercede on his behalf on the Day of Judgment. There is a special blessing of dying in Medina. And so this is something that you will hear a lot of people making dua for, that, oh Allah, give me death in Medina and give me burial in Baqi. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever is able to die in Medina, then let it be so, because I will intercede for you on the Day of Judgment. And this hadith is in Sahih Muslim. And when Umar ibn al-Khattab became Khalifa, he wanted to die in Medina, but he also wanted to be a shaheed. So he used to make dua that Allah give me the death of a shaheed in Medina. So his daughter Hafsa, she said, because he said, oh Allah, I want to die as a martyr in the town of your Prophet. So Hafsa said to him, she said that, oh my father, how can you become a shaheed in Medina when it is safe? If you want to be a shaheed, you have to go out and where there's like conquests going on, Iraq and, further out. So that's where you can get shahada. But in Medina, she's thinking that how is this dua, combination of dua, going to be fulfilled? And Umar ibn al-Khattab, he said, if Allah wants something to happen, He will make it happen. So a lot of these things, when you make dua and when you ask Allah for something, it all goes back to your own sincerity. The more sincere you are, the more likely that dua will be accepted and that thing will happen, no matter how impossible it may seem. Like some people, you will hear of them, wanting to memorize Quran, for example, and you hear of, people who are in their 80s, in their 70s, memorizing the whole Quran, memorizing the Quran. So if you are sincere, it will happen. So when something you have been asking for a long time is not happening, it's not the dua. You have to go back and you have to check your sincerity. You have to check your heart, that am I really sincere and honest in wanting to do this? So does anybody know how Umar ibn al-Khattab died? Yes?
Stabbed.
Yeah, where was he stabbed?
In the stomach.
Yes, no, I mean, where was he? As in physically, where was he?
Oh, he was leading the Salah of Fajr.
Yes, so he doesn't only get shahada, because being stabbed like that and sudden death and being murdered is shahada. Not only is he gets the death of a shaheed, but he dies in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. You know, where you would not even imagine that it would be in the heart of what you would call Medina or the Haram area, you know. Medina is also, so it's good to make dua to live in Medina, to die in Medina, and to be buried in Baqi, because the Prophet ﷺ said he will intercede for you. And just like, you know, you want good neighbors in the dunya, right? We all want good neighbors. Neighbors are really key issue, especially if you have bad neighbors, then you appreciate good neighbors. So similarly, when you're dead as well, you know, you want good people around you. A lot of the Sahaba are buried in Baqi, so you know. Okay, Medina is also the refuge of Iman. So the Prophet ﷺ said in Bukhari, Iman seeks refuge in Medina or goes back to Medina like a snake would go back to his hole. What does that mean? So you will hear a lot of the times that people saying that Iman will shrink back to Medina. So, what was the cradle of Islam? Mecca, and then it actually, you know, you could say Medina was the crucible of Islam, because that's where it sort of, you know, it flourished, and from there it spread far and wide, right, all the way up to Spain even. And then what happens?
Then it's coming back down.
Then it starts to shrink, and it comes back, and it comes down, and it comes down. And when you see times and things around you changing, like even us where we are now, you think to yourself, you know, how true are the words of the Prophet ﷺ. Things you never ever thought in your, you know, in your wildest imagination would happen, are happening today. I mean, some of the things that are happening even here, you know, it's so surprising that you would have never believed anybody's prophecy that that's going to happen here. I mean, you'd find it really difficult. You think, okay, you know, I'd really like to see how and when that's going to happen. And it's happening. And you can see that Islam is disappearing from around us, and it is shrinking back. And perhaps it is shrinking back to Medina. You know, so that's where it is going back. That's what the Prophet ﷺ said that would happen. And he also said, in the name of whom my soul is in his hands, nobody leaves Medina because he doesn't want it anymore, except that Allah will replace him with someone better than him. So Medina cleanses itself from impure, unclean people. So you will see people who live there, and then for whatever reason they don't want to live there anymore, and they leave Medina out of their own choice. I'm not talking about someone who's you know, kicked out or thrown out, but somebody who lives there and then they just think, you know what, I've had enough, I want to leave. So Medina cleanses itself like that. And the Prophet ﷺ said that Allah replaces that person with someone better than him in that city. And the Prophet ﷺ said, Medina cleanses itself from the people who are impure or the people who are evil. And the Prophet ﷺ said, the day of judgment will not occur until Medina drives out all of the evil people in it, like the fire will drive out the impurities of iron. And that's again something that we know will happen, that eventually, you know, all the bad or evil people, they will somehow, some people say through earthquakes, that there will be a lot of earthquakes, and that those earthquakes will drive people out, but some people will cling on to Medina and they will insist on staying there in spite of the, you know, shakes and everything. But some people will just think, you know, let's get out of here. And that's Medina's way of cleansing itself of all the filth. May Allah make us amongst those who live in Medina and die there and are buried in Baqi. And the Prophet ﷺ says, this is the next point. So far I have told you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points. This is point number 6. The Prophet ﷺ said, whoever plots against the people of Medina, Allah will make him dissolve like salt dissolves in water. And this is a hadith in Bukhari. So obviously that is a warning that don't plot and plan against Medina. Okay. And the last point, that's point number 7, is it? Or is it point number 6? 7. Medina is so sacred that the Prophet ﷺ said, you are not allowed to cut down trees in Medina. You are not allowed to hunt in Medina. You are not allowed to carry weapons in Medina because of its sanctity. So, sort of similar to Makkah. In Makkah you're not allowed to harm anything, kill anything. Similarly, in Medina you're not allowed to harm anything or break anything. So with this, we come to the end of the virtues of Medina. Inshallah, next time we will do a very interesting topic, which is the Hijrah to Medina of the Prophet ﷺ. And with this we will end. وَسُبْحَانَكَ اللَّهُمَّ وَبِحَمْدِكَ أَشْهَدُ أَن لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنْتَ أَسْتَغْفِرُكَ وَأَتُوبُ إِلَيْكَ.
وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.